right for a minute, it still could be an acquired cofactor that increases the symptoms. You don't have to have one or the other. They could be actually working together. And if so, treatment might help selected patients. And maybe not everybody, we don't know. The other thing I want to talk about, as far as my thoughts, is why do people get better so quickly? You know, they're better within minutes or a day or two. You know, this is not the inflammation's gone away. This is not the iron has been removed from the brain. This is not that myelin has now come in and made a whole new person the next day. No. It's either a placebo response because of endorphins, et cetera, or there's a physiologic imbalance that is corrected by this. That vein blockage may actually create an imbalance physiologically. You can change physiologic things very quickly. And how do we get the answer to that? We need collaborative scientific data with a multidisciplinary team. Dr. Duncan, would you agree? That's what we need? You can comment, but this is my last point. But until we get this, I recommend that patients wish the doctor's speed in acquiring the scientific data and try to be patient for just a little while longer, because I think we're going to understand a lot more in a year or so than we understand now. Thank you very much.
We are running a little behind, so I'm going to allow for a few right now, and then we'll have a question and answer panel at the end of the conference, so please write down your questions. Dr. Hubbard, we'll start with you.
The SRI position paper also recommends that under a registry, the patients can be treated. There was a second part of that SIR position.
Yeah, there were 5 parts, actually.
Yeah. In terms of the neurologist.
Oh, yeah, I'll repeat the question. The point he's making is that the SRI position statement had actually 5 points. And one of them was a registry. And under a registry, when you're collecting data, it was appropriate.
You recommend neurologists participate. Right now, there are no neurologists who are willing to participate. I would say the answer is virtually 0. You're here partly because you're one of the few who at least describe yourself as open-minded. Most neurologists are not open-minded. So getting them to participate in collecting EDS-S data, for instance, or the composite, is at this point virtually impossible. These patients, even the neurologists, they don't even want to be collecting that data before and after the rhinoplasty. They want no part of it whatsoever. And then finally, I think actually your Zamboni data was not correct. Mark, I want to get your thought on that too. I think that the 18th month prior to treatment had a 50% relapse rate, and the 18 months after treatment had a 27% relapse rate.
I have the paper right there. Yeah. I'll show it to you. But let me talk about neurologists. Actually, when I work with the interventionalist, it's great fun. Because they want to know the answers too. I mean, they don't want, just think if this thing doesn't work and they're out promoting it. You know, they don't need that. They want to know the answers. If you ask a neurologist, as Dr. Duncan will tell you, it ain't easy. Because it is perceived that if you are as a neurologist and you actually are involved in one of these studies, you must be promoting it. Like by being here today, people in this room know I'm not promoting it. But when I leave here, by Monday, I will have several emails about how dare you promote this at this meeting. So it's actually, the interventional radiologists want help. They want something done. It's the neurologists that are so rigid. That's going to be difficult. However, if you look at the number of trials that I have done over the past many years, I've done a lot of clinical trials for drugs. I would say most of them have been negative. I'm used to getting negative results. I don't go into it saying, I'm here to prove this drug company's drug works. I'm a disinterested third party. I'm here to say, does this work or does this not work? And I can tell you as often as not, drug doesn't work. Do I say, well, gosh, I've disappointed the company? That's not my job. My job is to document what's happened. Now, am I disappointed? We had a drug for secondary progressive disease that looked very good, was published, etc. And we have so many people with secondary progressive disease we have no treatments for. I was really disappointed it didn't work. But did that mean I changed my mind? No, it doesn't work. and it shouldn't be done, and it didn't even go to the FDA for approval, because it wasn't worth doing. So that's my job. And my job is to be a scientist. I can look at anything. And that's what we need. We need the neurologist to say, this is another clinical trial. And they need to be involved in the development of the trial, the outcomes of the trial. They need to assure us that we're getting the type of information that can make us have reasonable judgment at the end of what's going on.
I just have one quick statement, and I could be wrong, but every neurologist in San Diego County was invited to this conference, and I do not believe one showed up.
One did show up, and he came through the door and said, "Just want you to know I'm here, but I'm leaving." But I'll tell you his name. He specifically wanted to say hi to two people. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to make the answers shorter.
I'd like to point out a couple of discrepancies in your story about the Costa Rica patient.
Yes.
I get my information not off the internet. I got my information from talking to the surgeon who did the procedure and the patient's wife directly. He did not die from a stent. He died from a complication of TPA treatment for the lysis of the clot in his jugular vein. He was not denied treatment in Canada. He went to a hospital in St. Catharines. They didn't know what to do. They sent him to a surgical specialist in Hamilton who didn't know what to do. And they said, we have no idea how to treat this. On this basis, he went back to Costa Rica. When he got to Costa Rica, his stent was included. Pardon me, his jugular vein was included. They decided the best way to treat him was TPA. They did TPA overnight. He died of a complication of TPA therapy. You need to get your story right.
Well, I appreciate that because that needs to be reported. Because what I got was I was in Costa Rica talking to the doctors who were involved in the care there.
Did you talk to Fallis, the guy that did it?
No, I did not. I talked to the neurologist.
Did you talk to his wife?
But the point is there are deaths with this. We have to be careful.
No, but you got to say why the guy died, right? Did he die as a complication of the procedure? Did he die from inappropriate use of TPA, which has a significant morbidity and mortality? And the answer is he died from TPA. And
would he have gotten TPA if he had not had the procedure? No. It's a complication of the treatment.
No, it isn't. What you have to do is look at rigorous scientific data. I'm a surgeon. I look at surgical procedures. We look at the 30-day morbidity and mortality of procedure. And that's the data we go by. And when you're talking about the study done by Zamboni, you said that all the patients carried on their treatment. And the paper that he wrote is a little bit convoluted. But what you need to do is go and talk to Zamboni and ask him how many actual patients carried on with the treatment. And your data is wrong.
Okay.
The rest they didn't all carry on with the treatment.
Well, I'm going to get into this argument. What I'm saying is that the way the data was presented in the paper, neurologists were skeptical. I can only talk about what he wrote. Yes?
Well, glad to hear, and it's really hard to watch it as a messenger without getting really angry, even though I know you were saying the point of it. But what I'm wondering here is, why aren't neurologists looking at complete data and going, there's all this space for this opportunity. I got to jump in, I got to be all over this, right? Why aren't they doing this? I mean, the train's leaving the station, they're not on the train. And like, who's going to go back to the neurologist after this all shakes out, right? So,
Well, you're saying exactly what I say to the neurologist. My conversations with the neurologist are much more difficult than my conversations here. Let me assure you. Then you.
Well, the physiologic response, the rapid response, fascinates me too. How can some people feel different? I mean, it's 5.5 months now since I had my angioplasty of 3 vessels. And I could feel the releasing pressure in my head on the table. Sure, that may be received. Fair enough. But I can read a map now. I haven't been able to read it for 15 years. And these other profound things of this mental clarity coming back. The quick responses that are almost overnight and immediate, such as warming up the periphery, I suggest are probably perfusion hypoxia related. So just as a physiologic response, I want you to store that one so that, maybe we're reversing a slow stroke. You very well make the statements about the improvement post with regard to the folks with secondary and primary progressive. But those folks, if they've had a long neurologic injury, you know as well as I, rehabilitation is going to be absolutely critical. And that's why I have spoken to try and get the Canadian MS Society back on board. We need everybody working together. If rehab will work, and if we now renew the plasticity of the brain, maybe we're going to get something.
Well, I think that's really a good point. I appreciate you bringing it up, because I think that what this does, among other things, it gets people motivated to go to rehab more after the procedure. They feel better, let's go to rehab, they get better, and again, we just have to separate all this stuff out, and let's get a protocol. Like, you go to this procedure, you should go to rehab. I mean, I think that's your point. I think it's really an excellent point. And the key is, if we're not collaborating, it isn't going to work. We must work together. I wish the neurologists were more on board with studying this like we do drugs. But they're not right now, and we just have to keep after them. As we get more and more data, and some of the stuff Dr. Dave's doing and Dr. Hubbard's doing is going to help us stimulate more interest, I think. Yes, you've had your hand up the whole time. I apologize.
No, that's okay. Thank you, first of all, for coming. It takes a lot of courage for, I'm sure, you to be here. I wanted to say something that you mentioned at the beginning of your PowerPoint. You talked about the politics of the situation and how sometimes that interferes with the science of what you're doing. How can a patient like myself then make an informed decision on whether or not to get the process done when the politics is interfering so clearly with the scientific process?
You point out the problem, not the solution. The solution is a collaborative, multidisciplinary statement that says this is what needs to get done. This is what you need to have both sides. The turf wars have to stop. The turf wars have to stop, and Dr. Duncan has been struggling with this now for a long time, and I empathize with you for doing this. And
in America,
back in the day, if I were talking to a neurologist, people would be throwing things at me.
in Canada as well as in America, there's this turf war, as you call it, between the neurologists and the rest of the professionals. So how this is interfering with the science, what's going on, and we're getting caught in the middle.
You're right. You're absolutely right. You're right, and that's why I'm here. I mean, that's why I'm talking to neurologists, I'm talking to interventionalists, so I'm trying to say we need to work together. And I must tell you, the interventionalists are much more receptive than my colleagues. And Dr. Duncan can talk about the neurologists in Canada. It's really, here is the same way. It's very difficult. There are 5 studies being done now by Canada and the United States looking at, does this exist? That data should hopefully be published in the next 6 months. And that may actually add some clarity to this. If the National MS Society funded studies say this is something we need to look at, it's going to help a lot, I can tell you. Because they're waiting for the National MS Society. Until then, they want nothing to do with it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
you got it right.
we have a question